Hello, and welcome to Monmouth in Focus, a program about the services and functions of Monmouth County government. My name is Sue Kiley, and I am the Monmouth County Commissioner who liaisons to the Division of Aging, Disabilities, and Veterans. The division works very hard to make sure that veterans across our county know about the resources that are available to them and can share their remarkable stories of service and sacrifice. Today, I am honored to be joined by David Drummond, who is one of those heroes, who's going to tell us a little bit about his story.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'd first like to say thank you very much for your efforts on behalf of veterans and veteran services in the county. I really appreciate it, and I've been present when you have attended a number of functions for veterans, so thank you very much.
It's my honor to be there.
Right. I'm a resident of New Jersey, a longtime resident of New Jersey, and I've been in Monmouth County actually since 1977. I grew up in New Jersey. I was educated at Newark College of Engineering. I have a mechanical engineering degree and entered ROTC, and that's how I entered the service.
And you were in the Vietnam War as an Air Force pilot and were shot down from a B-52, if I have this correct, 35,000 feet, which seems incredible that you survived it. But can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Right. The time frame that we're talking about was when President Nixon had ordered bombing to bring the North Vietnamese back to the peace table. So I was part of that effort. During the bombing attacks, 100 B-52s were sent against the cities of Haiphong and Hanoi. I was assigned on this particular night to attack a power plant and rail yards in the Hanoi area. On the way in, we were struck by two surface-to-air missiles, which damaged much of the aircraft. The first one set the wing on fire on the left side and knocked out 3 of our 8 engines. And then the second missile struck behind me, which injured most of the rest of the crew and knocked out all of the electrical and communication aspects of the aircraft. We did have some control over the aircraft, but the aircraft commander realized that the left engine fire had turned into a wing fire, and that as soon as the wing broke off, we'd probably all perish with the airplane. So he ordered everyone to bail out of the airplane, which meant that most of the crew would be ejecting using ejection seats. I was the co-pilot, and I ejected out of the aircraft. Now, I was in a situation similar to what we are in the studio, you know, ambient temperature, normal pressure. So when I was ejected outside, we were traveling at 500 miles an hour, so the first thing was hit was a 500-mile-an-hour wind. Then the pressure went from normal pressure here to 35,000 feet, which is very low pressure. And the temperature outside was minus 65 below zero. So once I ejected out of the airplane and was subjected to those conditions, I also had lost my helmet, which we had talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But I was luckily able to maintain my oxygen mask and held that to my face. And as I separated from the seat, I fell head down from 35,000 to 14,000 feet. And at that point, the automatic systems on the parachute operated, and the parachute automatically operated. So at 14,000 feet, I'm floating down over the North Vietnamese countryside with cloud deck below, anti-aircraft fire going all over, airplanes flying all over the place, bombs being dropped, missiles being fired. So it was a dramatic change of circumstances, to say the least. And I was preparing, part of the training was how you would fall, you know, when you landed, so you didn't injure yourself. Well, it so happens that there was fog all the way to the ground, so I just hit the ground like a sack of potatoes. Luckily, I wasn't injured.
David, I'd like to hear about 50 years later when you went back over to Vietnam. Can you tell us a few things about that?
Yes, that was a rather emotional event, as you might imagine. I had heard about the trip, and I had a couple of friends who were on the trip who had suggested that I go along. I was somewhat reluctant at first. I wasn't sure how I would feel and how I would, face the situation. My wife encouraged me to do so, and I'm very happy that I did. I traveled there with 7 other prisoners of war, 2 of which were long-term prisoners, one for 7 and one for 5 years at the Hanoi Hilton. The trip started in Saigon in the south, and we boarded a boat, a river cruise up the Mekong River toward Cambodia. We traveled all the way up through Cambodia, saw the killing fields, and then when we reached Phnom Penh, we flew north to Hanoi. And at Hanoi, we visited their museums, with their representation of what had happened on that evening. And eventually we wound up at the prison, the Hanoi prison. Now, most of the prison had been torn down because, as you might imagine, the property is extremely valuable at the present time. When we went in, the entranceway was exactly the same. So when I was unceremoniously unloaded off the truck, the hallway and the entrance were just exactly the same, which sort of was quite creepy, to say the least.
Yeah, I bet.
And then as we went in farther into the museum, they had prison cells that were, I actually didn't find my own prison cell because that part of the prison had been torn down, but I visited a prison cell that was almost exactly like my own. And again, walking into it was very, very disturbing.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
What was it like coming back as a Vietnam veteran?
Well, I returned to the United States in 2 different ways. First, I had come back. I had already served 1 tour in Vietnam and had come back and had gone straight to an air base. So I didn't mix much with the general population. A lot of my comrades received a very poor reception, as has been noted. And then when I returned as a prisoner of war, the reception was much better. The population greeted us with joy in that we had returned.
David, I wish that we could talk for another hour because I would listen to your fascinating story.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's all the time we have today.
Yes.
So thank you everyone for joining us, and we will be back again and hear another story next time.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.